Hey everybody, welcome back to another SUPboarder video. In this video, we're going to be talking all about the new Armstrong range for 2022. We reviewed the Armstrong range last year, 2021, and since then we've very much been using a lot of Armstrong foils ourselves. We're owning foils and even got a few boards. Armstrong is a very proud New Zealand-based brand. New Zealand has really become a foiling mecca when it comes to the America's Cup being held there last year. The Kiwis are really into their foiling and they're also very good at it as well. The man behind the helm is actually Arnie Armstrong. He is the main driving force with the brand, but he has very good riders, designers, and a whole complete team that are working together to make the best foils on the market out there for all of us. Definitely the gear is aiming for more of the intermediate to advanced level, there's no doubt about that, and the gear is top end premium price points. So you are going to expect to see top quality, top fittings and finish, and the price does reflect that. So in this video I'm going to go over the ones that maybe you should definitely look at and maybe the ones that you should definitely stay away from, depending on what sort of rider you are, ability and what you want to get out of your foiling. But first off, I want to talk about the A+ system, which came to us later last year. It's basically a new system that has an extra bolt going through the foil and the mast to give it much more torsional stability. Arnie Armstrong found that with the high aspect ratio foils, the really big, wide foils like this beast here, which we'll speak about in a minute, you want to fix this foil as securely as you can to the actual fuselage and to the actual mast. And they've come up with the A+ system to secure that. There's two sides to the A+ system really. There is the mast and there is the fuselage. If you've got an original Armstrong foil, like a last year's foil that hasn't got A+, it is basically the same length and width and diameter hex sort of head fuselage, but there's extra bolt holes going through this fuselage, and also the mast itself has got extra holes going through the actual mast, and the foils have got an extra hole going through the top of the foils. Now Armstrong do supply as extra a really good tool sort of modding kit that you can mod your existing foils to go with an A+ system, and you can actually drill a hole through the base of your mast, and that's really easy to use. I did do that to mod my mast and my existing 1550 V1 foil. But to make the system really work well and complete the whole system, you're really going to need a new A+ fuselage. So this has got the bolt holes going straight through it and has got the extra one that's countersunk to take the barrel nut which secures the foil onto the front. So just to recap, you still can use the new foils on your existing older foil setup, because I was maybe taking the HA out with my older sort of fuselage, so you still can use that, but you can't locate the top barrel nut. And also you can mod your mast, but you are going to need a new A+ fuselage unless you really want to try and drill through a titanium core, which is what's in these fuselages. So they've sort of made it so you can get the new foils on the existing foil package, but really to get the most out of it you need the new A+ fuselage. Definitely if you're going down this more high performance, high aspect ratio foils, it's well worth doing that, because you are going to get way more connectivity to the actual board. If you're pumping, you're jibing, you're carving hard, you're surf riding, you're probably going to want to have an upgrade to the A+ system. A lot of brands, to be honest, have started adding a lot more sort of security and connection plates around their actual main mast fuselage joint. This one, to be honest anyway, was incredibly secure, I always found last year, so it didn't need very much modding, but a couple extra bolt holes and we're away. We'll probably touch on a bit more A+ system as we go along in the video, but let's carry on with the video and let's talk about the boards now. So right here we've got a few boards in the range. Right here I've got my prone small board. This is the 39 litre 4'10" small board for surf, wing, foiling. And then you've got your SUP wing range here, which is much bigger base boards. The difference is here, you can see I've got a 2021 board here on the right hand side of the screen. They've really squared off and chiseled the nose of the board. You've got a lot more stability when you're standing on it. These boards are actually the same volume. This board is way more stable. So if you're a heavier person, if you're a person that maybe lacks the balance sometimes, let's say, this board is much more stable than that board. It is worth mentioning that we actually find the existing boards a really nice shape and they're really lightweight. There's definitely more in this board. It weighs a little bit more. You've got a handle going right through the middle of the board. The foot strap placements on this new board and all the boards is much better than last year's. So you can have a nice offset stance here and you've got room to put your bolt holes both in, apart from sort of sharing one hole, which is a bit awkward with that one over there. The whole board itself is way more engineered than last year's board. There's much more of a recessed deck here than last year's board, so you're sunk down. The board's actually a lot thicker than last year's. As I said, they pumped that volume into a relatively square sort of shape. Definitely one of the standout bonuses with the geometry of where the foil box is and the foot strap placement, or where they're sort of aiming you should be standing on the board. It does mean that when you're standing on the board, you haven't got much board in front of you. So your swing weight from your pumping, your maneuverability, whether you're on SUP surfing, wing surfing, any sort of foiling sport, you're going to have not much board in front of your foot, and therefore it makes it way easier to maneuver and just get the most out of. Bottom of the board's got a big double concave at the front there, which channels the water through the back. Flattens off a bit more at the back of the board, but you've still got these big chamfered rails. When you do touch down, it sort of squashes you back up to get yourself back up onto the foil. I do find this board is a little bit quicker to get up onto the foil than the previous year's boards, and that's definitely to do with the nose shape, and it's forcing the water back towards the foil box. And also when you do touch down, because you've got this extra width at the top here, you've got that extra stability and stops you from rocking from side to side. The smaller prone foil boards and stuff, maybe if you're using it for high performance winging, these boards obviously are going to sink under your feet. This is a great lightweight board. Similar characteristics of setup underneath to the bigger boards, much more pulled in the nose, way less weight, so way easy to pump, just lively and more dynamic to use. You know, if you're that sort of person and you're looking towards these sort of boards, Armstrong have got a really good range of sizes this year in their boards, whether you're looking at really small prone surfing or performance wing surfing, where you're going to be sinking right under the water to get on your board in the smaller range. And they've got a nice range of bigger boards that aren't too long in the SUP wing range as well. So a lot of good range of boards to look at. Top end price points, but then you are getting that with the quality and the materials that are going into the board. And definitely something that's the same as last year, but needs mentioning again, I still love these foot straps. I think I really love them because they don't actually absorb any water, so they're very, very light. And also you can lie on them, squash them, you can stand on them if you don't want to use them. A very versatile, simple foot strap that's worked for me. And we do use them on lots of other boards as well. Okay, what should we talk about now? Wings or foils? Wings or foils? I'm going to go straight onto the foils because they are quite nice and exciting to talk about. So 3 ranges of foils in Armstrong: the CF, the HS and the HA. Recap on, I sort of said this last year, what they stand for. CF, carving freeride, sounds a bit easier, a bit nicer. HS, high speed, ooh, sounds a bit more exciting. And the HA, high aspect ratio. If you watched last year's video, I was going on and saying about how these foils are HSs, they're not high aspect ratio, because a lot of people were thinking that the HS was a high aspect ratio range. That wasn't a high aspect ratio range. This is a high aspect ratio range. So this is a high aspect foil. What that means is it's very long and very thin. It's going to offer you a huge amount of glide, a good amount of top speed, but it's going to suffer when it comes to some controllability, which we'll speak about in a minute compared to the other foil range. So this is the Armstrong HA range of foils, brand new this year. A lot of people raving about them, a lot of videos on the internet, and I have to say, it's been a lot of fun using and understanding them. It's pretty crazy to think that this was sort of Armstrong's top end foil a couple of years ago, and now this is what we're looking at. These 2 foils are still in the range. This is a 1550 V1 HS, which is now, gets a little bit confusing, pushed into the CF range. So instead of having a 16 CF, they've dropped that and you now have this 1550 HS version 1. Big old difference there. High aspect ratio, moderate aspect ratio, much shorter and fatter. So we'll come back to the HS and speak about that range more in a minute. Now these foils definitely look like they've come straight out of some top end performance sailing sort of thing like America's Cup or Sail GP. This is such a different sort of foil shape in general to many other foils in the market. You've got a much thinner depth here. The actual chord of the foil is a lot less. The actual shape, you'll notice it's like comes up, comes down and comes back up at the wingtips. There's a few standout things you'll notice with this. I mean, reading all the bumps and seeing the other videos, you'll understand this foil gives you a huge amount of glide. So just keeps you going. If you're into pumping and generating your own speed and getting your foil working in the water, this is the foil to do that. Endless glide, good top end speed. Many of you who are more experienced with your surfing, sup surfing, prone surfing are loving these foils, especially the smaller one like this, the 925, which is a very fast, little smaller foil. The basics is the smaller you go with your foil, the faster it's going to be, but the more speed you're going to need overall to keep it working. So the bigger the wave or the higher the wind, and you're going to get the most out of it. So if you are a bigger rider using it in smaller waves or lighter winds with your wing, you're going to go for a bigger based foil. But a lot of you are going to be looking around the sort of 925 or the 1125 size. I've been playing around with this one, the 1325, quite a lot with the wing, and I found some really interesting findings. Yes, they're fast. Yes, they have a huge amount of glide and they're very easy to pump. I'm not going to say all that again because it's just absolutely true. The big standout for me, I had no idea, was the amount this foil and the speed it would take you upwind, almost directly upwind. Sheeting right in, maybe a little pump with your front foot, you can pretty much point your foil with a wing directly upwind. So if you are trying to do distances, maybe do tacks, trying to get around the coast, trying to explore places, this foil is going to be incredible for you to do that sort of thing. Also goes to show if you're downwind, sup foiling, if you're prone, foiling downwind, this foil is going to link up so many waves. You can be able to go anywhere with these base foils. The other finding I found really interesting is when you're putting it on full carve, sometimes when you breach your tips out of the water, because these are long foils here, the foil starts to sort of almost suck the air down and catch, and then you just stall or you fall out of the sky. But this, because of the wingtip shape here, it comes down and up at the end. I feel like when you bring your wingtips out, the air doesn't sort of come down the foil. It's very, very responsive. So it almost feels like you can ride your foil this much out of the water and the rest of the foil is keeping you up. With the older foils, if you started to get too much out of your sort of wingtips out of the water, you'd come off the foil pretty quick. So I don't know what's going on here. I'm not the engineer. I'm sure Arnie will tell you exactly how it's working, but incredible way you can bring the tips out of the water, which is why I think a lot of the performance surfers out there are enjoying these foils. Downsides to these foils, or definitely things you need to be aware about, they are much more technical to use, okay? They're technical in a different way. They're not technical as in when you're up and foiling, they're not really, really unstable. Yeah, they're stable and they've still got quite a nice stability from side to side because they're nice and wide. But they have a very small area where you need to be riding that foil. So with a traditional base foil like a CF or even a HS now, when you go to get yourself up on the foil, you can sort of stamp on the back foot, you can bring your front foot up, you can get your foil initiated, get it up into the air, and you've got quite a big foil window, let's say, that you can ride your foil in, angle of attack like this sort of thing. Yeah, with this foil, it's very small movements. So if you're pumping to get up, you can't just ram the foil back, you've got to do very subtly. And if you don't do that, it'll just slam you back down again. So when it comes to pumping, getting up in lighter winds, just getting up in general, it is easier, but it requires a little smaller motions, and it definitely requires you a lot more time to get used to it than a more traditional shaped foil. So if you're that lower level intermediate and you're not coming out on your jibes and you're not really getting up on your foil efficiently all the time, do not look at this base foil. This foil is for somebody who is competent, who's happy making their jibes, who's happy getting up in lighter winds and getting the most out of their foil. Maybe sup surfing, you're making every single drop and you're getting up onto the foil and you're riding along your wave very well, then you can start looking at this. Otherwise, you are going to stunt your learning curve. There's no doubt you're going to love to have a go on it and it's going to be interesting and it's going to definitely give you some cred when you walk down the beach with this thing, but make sure you're at the level to use it. Moving down from there, if you're not quite at that level, you definitely need to be keeping and looking at the HS range. Now I say moving down from there, it doesn't mean it's not as a good foil. It is as a good foil, and in fact, it's probably still the standout foil for me. Also, they have changed the HS. The most popular HS, 1550, which is the one I own. I've got the 1550 V1 there. They've changed it to this shape here, which is the HS 1550 V2. So this is where I said that the current V1, well, sorry, last year's V1 is now in the CF range, and this is the new shape V2 HS. You put the two side by side, you'll see the changes are quite a lot here. There's a lot less thickness to the foil. There's a lot less flips sort of to the tips. The wingtips are a lot less sort of curved over. And the foil is a little bit stretched out. It's a little bit more high aspect ratio. It's not high aspect ratio, but it's a little bit thinner than the original based foil. I wouldn't necessarily say that this new HS is any harder to really use. It felt very smooth and very similar. It just gave more performance to the original HS. So it's just so much better for pumping. If you're getting into your pumping, it's so much better for just the speed and the glide around your jibes, keeping the flow up on the foil. I think they've just done general work to all of the foils, and they've realized that by changing this, giving it a better profile, doing subtle tweaks here and there, they will give that foil more performance. The HS range is still going to be really popular with a load of people out there, loads of wingers, loads of subsurfers, loads of prone foilers. You're still going to have a nice all-round range. It surfs well, it wings well, it goes upwind okay, it's good at pumping. It allows you to do a lot of the genres of foil, but it doesn't have to scare you into having to commit to something like a HA and having to really work out how to use the foil. These HS range of foils, they give you so much of a wider range of abilities to be able to use it. So as I said earlier, when you're pumping get up in lighter winds, you can be a little bit more aggressive. I actually still think for me, I could possibly get up in lighter winds with my, and definitely with this new HS 1550 opposed to a HA. But I think if I kept with the HA more and tuned it more with less dramatic footwork, I would be getting up more on the HA, but it would take me a while to get into it. So that shows you how that HA foils, they are the top end foils, okay? You need to know how to use them, but when you know how to use them, you're going to get more out of them. But by jumping down too early, it might stunt your progression when it comes to foiling. Like I say with all sports that we nail on SUPboarder, don't jump down too early because you will stunt that progression and you're going to suffer overall. So the HS range is still a solid range of foils. This is a nice new one here, and I imagine through the time they might tweak some other ones as they go through. Looking at crossways, not downways, looking at crossways from there, we've got the CF range, the carving free ride, still really popular with a lot of surfers out there using on the smaller foils. The 2400 is a super stable, easy foil to get into foiling. And also I think that range of foils is a really good price point as well. A lot of people are focusing into the highest ratio foils and the new HS, but the CFs and the older HS, the V1, the 1550, you can get them at really good prices now. So these were top end premium price points before, but they're coming down in price. You're still getting the great build quality, you've still got that fantastic foil shape. It's still a great foil, but they're much, much cheaper than these newer base foils. So now I think they're getting you better options to get into a top end brand, but not having to pay that premium price point. With your masts and your fuselages, as I said, you've got your new A+ systems coming in now. This is an original mast system here, so this is not an A+. A+ is where you got your bolts through the side, but the mast is still exactly the same. You've still got that great change in the thickness of the profile at the top to the bottom, gives you different stiffness, gives you different flex. The weight of the mast is still fantastic. A good change that Armstrong have done with the new A+ system fuselage is, here's my original one here, is you used to have to get titanium sort of shims that go onto the back. Now, these worked well, they were really good, but they were very expensive. And if you wanted to change your angle of your back stabilizer foil, you had to pay quite a bit of money to get these titanium shims. This year, they have dropped that So now you can put your tail stabilizer wing straight on the back of the fuselage and have no shim, or you can get some polycarbonate shims that just go in here to change the angle of your tail wing. A way cheaper, easier way to get playing around with your foil stabilizer. You can have a lot more of them. That's a good system that Armstrong have dropped that out, because having that titanium shim was great, but if you dropped it in the sand, that was money literally down the drain. Talking about the stabilizers or the rear wings from Armstrong, there's a few new ones. They've still got the original CF300, which is still the standout go-to tail wing for somebody who's getting into it the first time, who is trying to get their jibes nailed. Please stay on the 300. That is still the one to go for. More performance and faster foil. Then they've got the HS232, which is what I ride a lot of the time, especially for SUP surfing. Faster, quicker to turn, much more lively than the 300. And now there's these two stabilizers to join the Armstrong stabilizer quiver. You have the Flying V200, which is a pretty funky bit of kit, and you have the HA195, which is a very small, thin, fast stabilizer. The thing about these stabilizers, they don't weigh anything. You pick them up and you think there's nothing to them. So let's talk about the Flying V first. Definitely very standout, very different shape to anything else in the market. What this does is it offers you a good amount of speed, but it offers you a lot more of a livelier feel. So by them bringing the wingtips back, it means that the foil can rock from side to side, be very responsive. A lot of surfers using this now in the surf are coupled with the HA foils, you see them, and it really just livens up the foil even more, because these big HA foils, they're quite large, and you imagine they're not going to go from wingtip to wingtip or side to side very easily. This helps that transition. It helps them flow through the turns a little bit more. This is still a very technical little foil to use. I wouldn't go and use this as your first time foil. It's not really going to give you much more stability, because you haven't got much thickness here. They are swept back, so a little bit further back, but you still haven't got a huge amount of stability. Maybe if you're somebody who's already got a existing 1550 HS, or maybe you've got the new 1550 V2 HS and you're a competent surfer, a competent winger, and you want to liven up your turns, carve harder turns, maybe go for this instead of going for the new HA. It's a much cheaper option. It's going to really spruce up your riding a lot more. This, if you want to go fast, you need to have this. This is a speed beast. This, coupled with the HA foils, is super, super quick. Definitely doesn't offer you a huge amount of stability because there isn't much to it. But if you want speed, super thin, cuts through the water like anything. Again, it's still going to make the foil very maneuverable. Probably not going to make it as forgivingly maneuverable as this one. This one's a little bit easier. This one's more technical again, but it's much, much faster. But probably a lot of you are still going to be sticking with the Flying V and the 232 HS tail stabilizer. And quickly before we move on to the wing, your fuselage lengths. There's still a few different lengths there. The shorter you go, the more responsive, the more lively it's going to feel, but the much, much harder it's going to be. The longer the fuselage lengths, the slower, the more drawn out, the more boring it's going to feel, but the easier the riding is going to be. So if you're learning to jibe, going for a longer fuselage is going to help you way more than having a shorter base fuselage. If you want to rip turns and you are at that proficient level already and you're really looking for top end performance, well, you probably don't even need to hear what I'm going to say, but you're going to go for the smaller fuselage. So let's move on to the Armstrong version 2. We originally used the version 1 in our 2021 SUPboarder Pro wing test, and unfortunately that wing didn't do that well. It was quite a grunty, powerful wing, but I have to say they have tweaked a few little things with this wing, and now this wing is almost one of my new favorites from the stability point of view alone. There's not many wings you can hold completely in a sort of lightish wind conditions and they'll just sit there, but this wing's got an amazing ability just to be able to hold it one-handed. It almost feels like you could go winging one-handed, especially with the new power link bar that comes with all of the wings now. So you get them as standard, which is nice. Last year you had to buy them as an extra, so now you get this great carbon bar which doesn't firm the wing up or anything, it just gives you an extra thing to hold on to. I find that I'm probably from the front handle to just to the back of the power link bar, gives you a very direct feel. They have tweaked a few of the sizes and the canopy tension slightly different, and they've put some new material in at the front of the canopy. Now it does probably give the wing a little bit more stiffness. You've still got this big main tube. You can still put 8 psi of pressure into the wing. The handles are still really nice and standoff. They have changed the size of the handles slightly, but they're very comfortable and easy to use. Still kept the Y handles, so a lot of brands have dropped these now on their wings, but the Armstrong have still kept those. And the windows have changed shape and they're going towards more of the back of the wing, which does make it much easier to see through, I have to say, so a good change there. So for me, not loving the 5.5 before, this new version 2 and the 4.5 is a really, really comfortable wing. I do really like this. Light in the hands, a good amount of power. As I said, that bar really makes a difference. Very, very stable and easy to use. Seems to do exactly what you want it to do when it should be doing it. So no complaints at all about the new version 2 Armstrong wing. Good range of sizes out there, but definitely the 4.5 is probably going to be the most popular size to look at. It's a competitive price, this one, $849, £749. There's now more expensive wings on the market, and there's also cheaper wings on the markets from main brands. I do think this new change and the new design of this V2 does sit it at a good competitive price, and it is worth the money to come with also the carbon bar and everything like that, so it's nice and well packaged. Talking about all the packages, to be honest, all of the gear you get with your foils or your wings or your boards, nice bags, good quality bags, nicely padded. It's the sort of thing that you know you're buying a good top-end product because you get a nice accessory with that product. Everything around Armstrong is all nicely finished off. The bolts are all Armstrong, sort of embossed, the logos on them. You've got titanium cores inside the fuselage. Everything is well finished off. I said that in the last video, it's the same this year. We can see why Armstrong have added to their existing range of foils and complemented it really well with this new HA range and the new tail stabilizers. The change to the HS 1550 is really well received, and it does allow you to get a better performing front foil. If you're maybe a real beginner trying to give your very first flights, yes, there are some foils in that range, but really I would say Armstrong are definitely leading the way when it comes to solid intermediate to advanced riding foils and winging. I hope you found this video interesting and informative. Any questions, if you need to know a bit more about this equipment, or if you've owned this equipment, which a lot of you have, please get your comments below. Let us know your pros and cons. Any good, bad experiences about Armstrong. We'd like to hear it all. Definitely check out SUPboardermag.com if you haven't been on our main website. There's tons of other posts that are not on YouTube. If you haven't subscribed to YouTube, click that subscribe button and have a look through the feed, see what other videos take your fancy. There's well over 500 videos on there. And if you haven't already, check out SUPboarder Pro, our subscription service where we do loads of head-to-head tests when it comes to foils, wings, SUP paddles, even got inflatable SUPs coming up real soon. Definitely check out that. Ask us an infinite number of questions to make sure you get on the best kit for you. Thank you very much, and we'll see you on another video real soon.